Hey, we are two Star Wars nerds, and today we are talking about the poetry of Anakin slavery. It's just so crazy. We just finished watching Revenge of the Sith for who knows how many number of times. But you know what? Before we get into it, if you're not subscribed already, hit that red subscribe button. We have giveaways at every single one of our sub goals. We have a prequel love and appreciation live stream coming up. We have a lot of fun stuff we don't want you to miss out on. You're here obviously because you love the prequels. So go ahead, just get it out of the way, hit subscribe, stay connected. It'd be awesome. But you know, one thing we noticed in Revenge of the Sith and Attack of the Clones, Phantom Menace, is really this idea of Anakin always being a slave, but you've fleshed this out a little more. So why don't you actually like start this off, because you're the one who started bringing this to my attention even.
Yeah, and it's new to me. It's not something I really recognized or saw until more recently, since we've been watching rewatching the movies this past month. I noticed, in the Phantom Menace, Anakin is a slave and he wants to be free, but not only that, he wants to free other slaves. He wants to free his mom. And then in Attack of the Clones, you think he's free, but he's really not. I mean, he's serving under, the Jedi Council members, and then in Revenge of the Sith, he's still serving under the Council members, and then it transfers to Darth Sidious. So this poor guy who's always wanted to be free just continues to keep thinking he's moving up, but really nothing's changed. He's just serving a different master. And that's really sad, because he thinks he's actually going somewhere and he's being free, but he's not. And I think that's hard on anyone, because you think you're going in the right direction and you're really not. And I think it's part of why he ends up becoming Darth Vader and the man we see in the original trilogy.
Yeah, and I think the phrase "that's hard on anyone" is an understatement for Anakin Skywalker. I think his life is beyond hard when we watch it. It's a tragedy, and
can't imagine.
And yeah, even the idea of him being a slave to Watto, and the Phantom Menace is really about getting Anakin out of slavery. Yeah, there's a lot of other threads, but when you look at the Skywalker saga, the prequels are really about Anakin. You see that he is driven by love, mainly love for his mom. And even these, I guess you could say, the prophetic dreams he has as the chosen one. Like you mentioned, the dreams to free other slaves. He wants power, even as a young kid. And then in Attack of the Clones, what's so interesting is he's still driven by love, but now it's more like passion. He's been dreaming about his mom and Padme for 10 years, and he wants to be with Padme, and it's intense. And he wants more power. And you even see that conversation with him and Padme in the fields of Naboo, where essentially what he's saying is he's like, I just want to be the one in charge. Like, wouldn't that be great? You and me ruling everything. And it seems like it's kind of like unsettling to her, that thought. But he just has this idea, like, I think just one person should be in charge. And this whole idea of like, he was a slave, but now he really wants to like be the slave owner. He wants to be the one enslaving everyone else. And then when we get to Revenge of the Sith, like you said, then it transfers, and now he is a slave to power. He's a slave to anger. But I mean, at the end of the
emotions.
Day, so true. And really, he's a slave to Palpatine. First and foremost. And so what were your thoughts when we were watching this and you're seeing that interaction play out between Anakin and Palpatine, where it's a lot more forward in regards to like Palpatine's manipulation? I don't know, I was telling you earlier, like as we were watching Revenge of the Sith this go around, I was just like way more emotional than normal, and just looking at it from a different perspective, and just like really analyzing Anakin and what he was doing and why he was doing things, and even seeing his struggle in the different things he was doing. Yes, he continued doing them, but there you saw a struggle. And I think it's that tension of wanting that freedom and not knowing how to get it. What's the right path? What's the right thing to do? And I think obviously he's doing things that
anyone would feel probably guilty about doing. But I think it's more than even just that he's so tormented, and he's a slave to that, to even his torment. And I just think it's a sad story, which is hard because Anakin's one of my favorite characters, and I think that's why Revenge of the Sith has always been harder for me to watch, because I don't like to see his downfall. It makes me sad. I was like tearing up tonight when we were watching it.
And yeah, it really is a heartbreaking tale. And you know what I just think is so interesting, even thinking about George Lucas and his vision, he loves to just draw backwards and forwards in time to his different works. And he likes to show these threads in his stories all being connected.
It's a good storyteller.
Yeah, and when I was watching it, I was thinking of how Palpatine is talking about Darth Plagueis, and how he's talking about his life and this pursuit that he had to keep people alive, and even how he's like, oh, it's ironic, you know, that he couldn't keep himself alive. And the poetry, you know, I just love that phrase just because George Lucas, you know, he said, you know, it rhymes like poetry, you know, but I love this idea of Palpatine presenting this story of irony where he killed his master, and he's using that to lure Anakin in. But literally the irony, or the poetry, if you will, is that that's the very thing that takes Anakin down. That this idea of, you know, I can keep Padme alive not only kills Padme, but it enslaves him again. Like, he thinks he's going to have freedom and he's going to have the life he wants with his family, with his kids, with power, you know, with never having to lose someone again.
And not have to answer to anyone else.
Yeah. And instead it's completely the opposite direction.
Because you even see in Revenge of the Sith, yes, he submits to Palpatine, but then he even tells Padme, like, I can overthrow him. Like, I can be the guy in charge. And so there's definitely more than just him wanting to learn from Palpatine. Like, he wants his job.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, you even have when they encounter Dooku, when Obi-Wan and Anakin encounter Dooku, Anakin's like, you know, my powers have doubled since we last met.
That made me laugh.
And Dooku rightfully is like, you know, twice the pride, double the fall. And again, he's a slave to his own pride. He has really kind of drank the Kool-Aid, as it were, to just how great he is, and he thinks he's untouchable. And even what's interesting is when in Attack of the Clones, he's dreaming about his mom, and he doesn't want to lose her, and he goes on this journey to save her, and that begins the descent into darkness. And then he begins having dreams about Padme, and he doesn't want to do it, so he takes it to a further extreme, and it ends up going way worse than it did with his mom. And, you know, one thing I found interesting as well is in Attack of the Clones, when Anakin admits to Padme about the Tusken Raiders, you know, he says, here's what I did. You know, I slaughtered everyone. And he had no problem saying he slaughtered the children. And then when it comes to Order 66, he omits that information, and he shrouds it. And
because he knows she's not going to be about it.
Yeah, and he's trying to like control this narrative. It's like, let me just do everything I need to do and it'll all work out. When in the end, he's so full of rage and regret and anger and hate and evil and the dark side that he ends up force choking his pregnant wife, the love of his life, the very one. The reason
he's doing all of this, supposedly.
Yeah, and it's like that's the poetry and tragedy of it, is that it all started with this innocent boy on Tatooine just dreaming of freeing slaves, dreaming of just this free republic, and he just
being free himself.
Was like, this would be amazing. And then you fast forward to episode 3, and he's destroyed everything around him, and everyone that's ever loved him, he's not only burned all those bridges, he's either killed them or attempted to kill them.
And you can see throughout, especially in Revenge of the Sith, how Palpatine's trying to isolate him more and more. You see him trying to get him alone. And I think when Mace sent him off by himself to sit in the Jedi temple while Mace and the other Jedi went to confront Sidious, I think not necessarily it could have been avoided, but I think he should not have been alone to dwell on those thoughts, and that I think him being isolated made him think, and that's why he ended up I'm trying to imagine what if Obi-Wan was there, what if Yoda sat with him. Obviously they're both busy, but how different could things have been? Would it have changed anything?
Yeah, and it really is an interesting thought how Palpatine's continually trying to pull him away, and even the idea of him being the ambassador to the council, and he's even creating division in the Jedi Council.
He's trying to make him build up his pride because he knows the Jedi aren't going to like that.
Yeah,
so he's isolating even in those relationships. Who does this guy think he is?
And what's even interesting about that is you have, like you mentioned, he's essentially a slave, or you could say a pawn in the Jedi Order. Yeah. He's the chosen one, and they've decided to use him to spy on Palpatine, and it is a necessary evil for good. But then again, he has this idea that the all-powerful one, is going to bring balance. He is like the savior. And instead what ends up happening is he's just getting used by everyone. And it just all comes back to, it's all about Padme. And even, when he becomes Vader in the suit, he asks about Padme. And then even then, Palpatine is making him again a slave to anger, a slave to him. And you see the smirk on Palpatine's face. Yep. And that's when we're talking about why we love the prequels. This this is just so crazy to me, just how good Anakin's story is. The further you dive into it, the more you just realize this was really, really well thought out. Yeah. And I know Anakin's your favorite character, so I'm not going to make you talk any more about the heartbreak and tragedy of Anakin. It's a necessary part of his story, but it's intense.
I will say it just makes Return of the Jedi that much more powerful, and that's why that's my favorite movie, is to see that redemption and to finally see Anakin free. That's the moment he's free from slavery.
And what I love about the prequels is what you just said, that it adds so much more contextual depth and emotional depth to the original trilogy for me. It
makes them way better.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know that was possible.
Yeah, and I love the original trilogy so much, and I think the prequels just take it even deeper. It's George Lucas getting exactly what he wanted. Yep. Well, we are two Star Wars nerds, and this is part of our Why We Love the Prequels series. We have a prequel live stream coming up where we're just going to show our love and appreciation for these movies and George's vision. Yes. We would love it if you would join us, and if you're not already, hit that red subscribe button. We are two Star Wars nerds. May the Force be with you always.